Yo, what's up, world? This is Dane Tomas, and you're listening to the Dane Tomas podcast. Every week, I talk to experts, weirdos, new friends, and old ones about everything from magic to business to creativity and human awakening. So, strap yourself in, lay back and relax, cause we're heading straight for the black hole.
And we are on.
Mm-hmm. We're on.
Hey, Yazzie. What's up?
Hello. Hello, Dane. Hello, everyone else. Yeah. Mm.
I love how poised your voice sounds. I'm like, yo, what's up? And you're like, hello, everyone.
Mm.
Hello, good people. Welcome to the
Love.
conversation.
Yes.
Uh,
Pumped to be here.
I'm excited. I'm excited for this chat. Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do my best to do one of my good, bad, awesome, terrible intros. Jasmeen, I know, professionally as an ISTA facilitator and as someone who is doing a lot of work with Egyptian mysteries and holding this priestess archetype strongly. And, I was telling you this story that a couple of days ago, I have a friend who was wanting to know more about the Egyptian mysteries. And I did a quick social media post. Hey, gang, I have a friend wanting to learn more about this. Where should a person start? Who should they look up? What books should they read? And, there was a lot of books with the name Isis in them, of like 100 comments. But also your name came up like 4, 5, 6, 7 times of like, boom, 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 boom. And I feel like, our personal crossover really is in the realms of kind of tantra and magic and mystery schools. That would be, the territory that where we've met and where we co-overlap and where our interests probably dovetail and what's probably going to form as the foundation for this conversation. So yeah, that's my introduction, rambly as it is. I'm super excited for people that follow me to listen to this, because I think a lot of them are going to get a lot from getting a taste of you. Yeah.
Hi everyone, and I want to share just the word mystery or mystify. I feel like this is about demystifying it and bringing out the mystery to lend it, to make it really relatable. These are super organic teachings in a way. They're just nature. If nature had a voice, it would be saying that. It's not so much this abstract vision or kind of ideal of what we feel it is. Actually, it's really relatable, really actually quite down to earth, and it's just the voice of nature itself in its totality. So that's what I feel Egypt carries as a code, really.
That's beautiful. And I already am feeling like this polarity, at least just in this conversation, of like kind of holding point as like this kind of magic nerd, and really feeling you as this kind of organic, connected, intuitive knowing, where I'm like, just before I'm like, I want to talk about this and this. And you're like, well, I don't really know anything. I just have learned from being on the land. I'm like, fuck, that's so much more interesting than like, oh, have you read Isis, blah, 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 which is the, that's the key one you've got to read if you want to understand. And yeah.
Yes. Well, Egypt is a place, like, I mean, even as we know, it's a Ray 1, it's a Ray 1 mystery school in a sense. It deals with power, but then what is really power? And to also demystify what power is. And I feel when everything is stripped bare to its bones and the soul of it is revealed, that is power. And so I'd love to feel like in this sharing, we kind of just take all the things that we think we know about things and just kind of strip it bare to the bare essentials, Yes.
Are you open? Would you share a little bit on your heritage, like your cultural and genetic and whatever, like how you as a physical being on this planet, where of your influences and your bloodlines and your where you're from. Tell us a little bit about yourself, love.
All right. Well, I was actually born in good old England, actually. That's probably where the posh Englishness comes from at moments. I was born in London, but my father is Egyptian. My mother is Austrian. And I was already fascinated by what I saw. We had a lot of papyruses in the house, in the sense of like, I was scared of them actually. I was like, oh my God, they look so
Mm,
powerful. I remember just crawling on the floor so I wouldn't catch the eyes of like Nefertiti looking at me or something. So there was already this sense of, oh, what is this? So, and when I was younger, we went to Egypt, of course, to visit family, and my dad took us there, and I just fell in love with the land. What I really fell in love with, it sounds strange, is the smell. It doesn't make any sense, but it was like this sensory
mm,
experience. Like I felt it in my blood, and so I really asked my father, like, please, can we move to Egypt? I really need to move to Egypt. And then my dad actually moved us all. I was about 12 years old, to Egypt, and there I
wow.
continued. And I think he was really happy, of course, that, oh my God, my child wants to go back home to the roots, and my mother loves it. She still lives here. They both live here. We were raised here, and yeah, and that began a love affair with the land. And I wanted to go, and I stayed, and I went through my puberty here. I went through being a teenager here until I ended university here. But then I needed to go. like I as
Mm,
being who I am and the woman I am, which really stands for freedom, love, and power at my core, it was starting to get to me. So I went on my pilgrimage, and did the whole 10 years of travel around the world, only to find that it's all here. So I'm half Austrian, half Egyptian, raised
yeah.
in Egypt. The last 5 or 6 years, I've been coming to Egypt pretty much from 4, 5, 6 months a year, and pretty much feeling my roots settling more and more here. So I feel like I'm a connecting bridge between this land. I speak the language. I love the culture. It's like it's home. It's where my soul feels most at
Mm,
home. Planet. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, I mean, I haven't like not like I've capitalized on it a lot, but I feel like an honor and a privilege that you're kind of in my speed dial, and I'm like, oh, you have a real connection to this place, which is, I've been there with you. I've been there a couple of times, and it's a strong, incredibly strong place. And the last, let's call it year, I've been really dialing into, I feel like my authentic spiritual heritage is basically magic and ceremonial magic, which
Mm-hmm.
the final transmissions of come through the UK, but everything that got distilled, Crowley, the Golden Dawn, etc., basically goes back to Israel and then goes back to Egypt. There's no two bones about it. It's the Kabbalah, and then before that, it's Egypt, and there's other
Mm-hmm.
bits and pieces, but
Mm-hmm.
but those are the two most authentic transmissions. But even those two kind of collapse back to like, well, it seems like they were probably doing all of this shit in ancient Egypt, and we don't know for sure, but I think they were. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, it's exciting for me to have this conversation with you because I feel like we've shared these resonances. We've never unpacked this, and um, yeah, I'd love to tap into, like, you've been running events and taking tours and teachings and different stuff like that for quite a while. Like, I'd love to hear about what sort of things you've been doing. Like, what do you transmit? What do you teach? What do you open up for people?
Mm, beautiful. Well, it keeps changing, of course, as I change, and as we keep evolving all together. It's like there's an intelligence that moves through us. So I love to just be available to listen to that unfolding intelligence. Um, just to go back to your, this is connected to something I do, which is how it goes from magic and all the Western world and all the esoterics, and then it trickles through. But actually, I feel Egypt is very connected to an African wisdom, and I want to just give some
Mm,
credit to to the
Mm.
continent of Africa. There's some amazing tribes that have been here for, on the continent for thousands of years, which were incredible, just incredible seers and really grounded beings, and they could understand the language of the stars and earth, and really connected to nature. So it does stem from Africa, I feel. And then, of course, over time, Greek influences and all that, but its root, its core is on the African continent. So one of the things I've done here is organize ancient Egyptian yoga teacher trainings with a beautiful sister from Zimbabwe. We've done 3 of those to bring back this ancient culture of yoga, actually, and cosmology, and learning the deeper cosmology, which is basically also connected to the tree of life, and working with those maps of the tree of life that come from here. And the last journey I just finished was called Resurrection, which was the whole trinity of, Osiris or Osar and Isis and Oset, and their love births Horus or Heru, which is our will and our divine child, our soul. So I've worked deeper in the realms of that soul initiation, of that merging and unification of polarity to give birth to our soul nature. And with that, it takes a certain map, certain gateways, certain journey that the soul takes, which one of them is the underworld, which is really important here in this land. Is you've got to face, you have to see yourself in the mirror as you truly are. And you need to communicate that to the world, which is true, not this little hidden truth that I keep in my little chamber for myself. And then I say those kind of separations create what is basically not living in harmony or within the laws of nature, which are pretty much make us creators and give us our power. So when we're not when we're not in that integrity, then we're not creators, or co-creating, and we're not really in our power. So we have to face those fears, and we have to see ourselves in the mirror of truth. I would say that sums it up. And especially to see what is weighing your heart. What is that which is, the scale basically at the end, where the heart has to be as light as a feather. What is weighing the heart? And to actually not turn a blind eye and try to look outside and it's that radical self-responsibility, a deep gaze inside to see the truth of what's really there. And only that will uplift the heart. And it has to be spoken in a way, which is like the whole ma'at kind of, eventually the whole journey leads to ma'at. Going through the temple of Isis has its own initiation. Going through the temple of Osiris has its own. All these temples are houses of life, basically. Our soul goes there to remember a different aspect of itself. But ultimately, the end journey is, are you enlightened, not of mind, but of heart? So are you basically in love and joy? And are you sharing that with others? And have you in a way spoken from there, which means not lingering in the little, shadows of our shame and fear, and letting them pull us down, and dissociating, disconnecting that which we know to be true in the core of us, and uttering something completely different. And this happens a lot in relationships. It happens a lot as we're children. Just the way we tend to be brought up is, don't express that which is true to your core. So yeah, these are just some fundamental, we could unpack every temple as its beautiful, deeper mystery. But they weren't even called temples as much as they were called houses of life. They're places, they were the embodiment of nature itself. So when one would go there, they would aspire to that part of nature, Isis represents in some of the work our memories. We go there to purify our memories, to repattern our memories. Something happened in the past.
So there's a piece I want to jump on with you. Yes,
go for it. Yeah,
there's a piece here. Yeah. P.S. I love what you're bringing through. By the way, I just want to say, like, there's something exquisite here. It's like I'm sitting here just kind of seeing like symbolic data realigning. I'm like, in a whole state. But there's a piece. I want to bring it back to this piece around magic and around how people interpret, let's say, from the inner world to the outer world. Or, I've been diving into all these magic forums. There's entire communities of people learning magic and doing, the newbie question and whatever. It's okay, I want to work with such and such. I'm feeling drawn to such and such. What should I do? Well, you should put offerings to that. So there's the old school seeing of an energy or an attribute as a god, you know, it's Thoth or it's Odin or it's, you know, Hermes or it's whatever. And well, you know, Jupiter likes this. You know, I'm doing a Jupiter dinner in a couple of weeks, and we're doing wealth magic, and we've been building it up for weeks, and we're doing these little Jupiter chants, and we're putting things that Jupiter likes, you know, and we're calling in bigness and expansion and kingship and sovereignty and wealth, and you know, so there's this beauty of working with gods, you know, and I'm doing the air quotes for anyone just listening to the audio of like, well, I'm invoking gods, you know, and when I was in, I don't know, grade 5, maybe. I was still in the UK. So I remember doing a presentation on ancient Egypt, you know, the pyramids, the whatever, and maybe some reference to the gods. And in ancient Egypt, they worship this god and this god and this god, and they've got these different narratives and stuff. And a lot of the realms that you and I have played in, which are informed by a bunch of different traditions and heritages, but on the modern level, even like the Jungian psychology recognition of, like I'm doing this a lot with Christian. It's like, Jesus is just the idealized form of man. It's a model represented in books of like, this is a good man who represents truth and compassion and such. And while this guy, the Satan guy, he's representing the animal or the descent or the whatever. And, you know, if I meet someone who's a fundamentalist, then they're like, no, that's a person. That person is out there, and they're out there being bad. And I'm like, no, don't you think that like that's you and that's an aspect of you? And if you want to commune with that aspect, you're going to activate more of it. And I'm warning you, it can be serious, it can be a big deal, but that's part of you. And this whole, whether we're doing the tree of life or whether we're doing whatever, it's the microcosm, macrocosm piece of, it's me, but I'm the universe, and it's the universe, but it's me. And so I guess what I want to tap in, because everything you were saying to me, because I know you and I know maybe some of our shared assumptions, is like, it, you know, the Egyptian gods, you know, and like I remember talking to you about it, and you're like, oh, well, they're not really gods, you know, and it's like, I'm gonna say, is it Neteru? Is that how I say it?
Yeah.
Is it the Neteru?
Yeah.
And so I want to open this thread of recognizing the gods or these aspects as intelligences or whatever, because I feel like you've got an awesome take on that. So let's say I'm coming to you from like, okay, I'm going to worship Thoth, and he's going to give me magical powers because that's this person who's, you know, he's the king, he's the magic guy. What's your take on all that? You know?
First of all, when I hear that, it makes me giggle, you know, because if we create magic, I feel ultimately we have to create that from the playful child. I mean, that's really what we're doing when we're working with magic. We're divine children, and we can, in a way, dress it up, make it theatrical, ritualistic. But in the end, it really is just a divine child playing in this universe. But it doesn't even need all that, I feel, to tap into magic. It's that innocence and the purity of that heart that just is in magic, you know. So yeah, that's just one thing I wanted to say about magic. As for the Neteru, or the forces of nature, totally, they're not gods and goddesses. I really starting to see that more and more the more I'm here on the land. So we tend to idealize gods and goddesses. They become things outside that are worshipped. We put flowers to them, and we see them in this ideal image that somewhat, I feel, disconnects us from the core worthiness on a soul level. Like, we're still saying, I'm not good enough, and you have that, so I have to come and offer you something, do this to gain your favor, to gain your approval. It's still projecting mummy daddy stuff, I feel, onto these images. Whereas the forces of nature here are saying, God damn, you are so fucking powerful. You are creator. We are intelligences within you. So we are basically those intelligences. And when we bridge that God mind, goddess mind, divine mind into our cellular structure and merge that animal spirit, you know, soul, body, all the different parts, and we just reborn again, resurrected again as creator. Now we're starting to really play in a bigger field of magic where we're actually co-creating what would be a better world for others. So we're stepping into a bigger game. So Isis, Osiris, and I'm calling them by their Greek names. These are not the Kemetic names, but I'll just use the Greek names because they're easier to understand. But they have their own names that are written on temple walls. So and they represent different parts of our anatomy of spirit or different parts of our intelligences, you know. And so when we meet those parts of us, we're actually just coming home to ourselves. We're unraveling. We're you know, there's a time and place for all these different forces of nature. Isis, for example, or Osset, really connects us to the human emotion. She connects us to that container that is the nurturing kind of embrace of life. It's the milk, the sap, it's our blood, it's our seed, but it's also our pain and suffering. As humans, we somewhat are born from a mother who's screaming in pain. Like, you know, we don't want to make anything more beautiful than it is. No, life is, you know, we're birthed from this blood, this flesh. There's the pain, and there's also the pain of separation, from being disconnected from something that is so pure and true and whole, and, you know, that is love. And so connecting to that source of that suffering and pain or separation is a really important gateway. I don't feel like we can bypass that gateway. And with that, the medicine is to grieve and to feel, like to really feel that longing in the heart. And that longing is kind of leads to the belonging, but we you know, without the longing, without the grieving, without that moment of, oh, it hurts, you know, it fucking hurts to be separated. Like, she's that medicine at that moment, she's that temple at that moment, you know. So I think Isis is really sometimes made into, I feel why Isis is coming in very strongly into the world now. I love the word Isis, isness. It's just connecting to what is. She is, we are. When we start to see that the way we are is actually divinely perfect, like we don't really need to idealize or go, we are, that is isness. When we recognize that source of life that's giving us that breath in the morning, we open our eyes, we're alive. Like, that is the isness, and that's Isis, you know. It's freaking simple, but it's often made into these, you know. So when I'm with Isis, and I was with the Isis for 9 years, she led me through my neurological repatterning.
What do you mean by that? Can you say what you mean by that? You were with her for 9 years?
So I basically, I wouldn't say I was initiated by a priestess, but the land herself, the temple itself here, took me in and kind of said, okay, you know, learn what Isis is. And in that time, it was just recognizing that which I am, my pain, my sorrow, my beauty, and the parts of me that were so deformed in a way, or so unlovable, which I thought were. It was embracing those parts of me, and working with her. It's a deep gaze into the belly of the truth of what is, but in the emotional body, and really seeing our past in a way. She kind of works with the water memory system, the womb, the moment of conception, the way the cell forms. It's like matter forming, and it's the matter, it's the mother. And so neurological repatterning, shamanic breathwork, anything that kind of starts to shift who we are through trance, actually, through a method of trance, through dancing, through breathwork, we start to shift our neurological pathways. We start to bring in more of who we are. Those are all kind of Isis-like qualities, you know. So yeah, she's just us, basically. We are that, you know. I don't feel, I don't know. There's so much written out there, but I feel when we return to that simplicity, then we're really starting to understand these forces of nature. And we don't need to read so much about them. We just have to be spacious enough and dare to dive in a bit deeper to that which we're not seeing, and be willing enough to see it, to really access what that is. And they're there all the time. She's there all the time. It's our own living wisdom that I feel is that intelligence. So, for example, I'll bring us to Thoth for a moment. When they say Thoth is the record keeper of wisdom, it's not the books we read and the different formulas. Yes, that can help, but again, I feel that's the divine child playing in the field of creation, right? But if we really want to connect to Thoth, it's every experience we have, if we are aware, will lead to an embodied wisdom. Every experience is wisdom, every single one. And life will throw good ones, it'll throw painful ones, it will throw amazing ones, it will throw shameful one, whatever it is that we, But when we embrace that and that experience becomes our embodied wisdom, then we're really starting to work with what Thoth is. Like, we are embodying wisdom. We speak that wisdom, not from what we know or what we think we know, what we've read, but because it's come from our direct experience. That is power. That is true wisdom. And that's what I feel Thoth represents, If we're going to start to work with them as our allies, like as our brothers, sisters, as a family, basically, yeah.
Oof. Can we take a breath? Audience, take a breath. Let that all sink in. So, like, what you're bringing is so so beautiful. Actually, so beautiful. I'm almost hesitant to go where I want to go next because it's a little less beautiful and a little more sticky. But I want to ask her because it's in my field a lot,
Go for it.
I'm really curious about your take on cultural appropriation, on different people accessing different schools of wisdom and lineages and all. Like, I'm sure you must have come across some of those dialogues in your journey as being someone who's kind of bringing access to ancient Egypt in some ways, like of this narrative of like, well, I'll give you a bit of framework, right? One, through my other endeavors, through the spiral, through men's work, through whatever, through tantra teaching, I found myself continually brushing up against social justice conversations, equality conversations, identity politics conversations, which initially, as a cis hetero white male, I was always like, what is it? Why would you even care about? You're just trying to ruin this for everyone, But then it's been 7 or 8 years since I was starting to have those conversations, and so now I find myself being the person amongst a bunch of neo-tantra teachers going, hey guys, like the way that kind of white people who kind of came from California use Shakti Shiva isn't really how Indians use Shakti Shiva. And when like a trans person or a non-binary person comes into our space, it doesn't make any fucking sense. And so I'm kind of like this weird position where when I'm amongst the political kids, I'm kind of like the privileged colonialist who just does what he wants and takes what he wants, like how could you use chakras in the spiral or whatever. But when I'm amongst the other side, I'm like, hey guys, there's this whole narrative that people in our world don't even talk about. You didn't even know this is a thing. Okay, so there's a whole thing. And so it's very interesting that I've found myself in this in between the spiritual and political spheres, you might say. And also, I've been particularly finding my resonance in a lot of the British secret societies and magical traditions, and particularly Aleister Crowley was like my childhood anti-hero, who was like the dark figure and everyone's got all their stuff around him or whatever. People love or hate Aleister Crowley, right? But if you actually read him and actually absorb a lot of him, a lot of the issues just dissolve because it's a lot of symbolic stuff. But it's hard to ignore the kind of colonialist attitude of like, well, this is a white dude in the 1800s traveling the world, capturing spiritual secrets and taking whatever the fuck he wants, And to bring it back to our conversation, Egypt particularly is the root of all of it. So we've got the Golden Dawn and then we've got Crowley and his, I don't know how much you know about him, but his whole structure and system was like talking about the aeons of, the 3 eras and basically, moving from the era of Isis to the era of the aeon of Isis to the Eon of Osiris to to the eon of, who am I missing? It's Horus. So it's the whole idea of feminine era, masculine era, integrated era was his whole model. So, but his whole thing is built off appropriated Egyptian magical concepts, really. And one more piece before I throw it back to you, I also follow quite a few African American magical people, witches, priestesses, magician types, and those guys have a super strong claiming of like kinetic stuff that sometimes I'm like, I don't even know if this is even fucking accurate. I'm not sure if this is just an identity piece that has landed. It's like, this is ours, and like, white people shouldn't be learning that shit, So I just want to throw that whole piece of complexity to your world, and just hear, I don't know, what are your thoughts on all that?
Thank you. I think this is so essential when we start talking about this, because we can go on about codes and this and that, but this is real. This comes along with everything else. And so yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, I'm aware that with things to do with Egypt, it either goes into a really kind of white colonial magic, super society elitism, and people feel very elated by it all and very important by it all, and then they feel that they're better than others, and it leads to a great inferior thing. And also, I want to, I want to give it back to Africa. It is an African lineage, and yet, of course, it can also go pro-black, and it's very black, and the melanin is what gives us the power, and these guys were black, and being here, I won't say that doesn't happen from certain beings, who claim a certain Kemetic lineage, and I understand. The fact is, this continent has gone through a hideous and horrendous slavery, as has other places. And we cannot speak of this. We cannot speak of this land or even this continent without actually bringing up slavery, bringing up that this is also part of the story of the land, or part of the story that's interwoven here. You want to come to Egypt and see Egypt as it is, see Africa as it is, and see the truth of what has happened. Yeah, people came and took away the natives as slaves, but also beings here have enslaved each other too. So that is something, it's because I feel that there was a time where just the distortion, power became so, when there's such a true power, and I feel truly in these lands there was a true power. It was so pure because it was based on ma'at, which are the principles of being in unison with the laws of nature. But power is so easy to get drunk on. Power is something, once it's sipped, but from a different, it's like, just a little more, and then the whole vagueness and fogginess of the mind comes in, and then we forget what it was all about. And that's pretty much also the seed of Egypt. It did lead to a distortion of power, where beings were not in the integrity of what was. So I feel like when dabbling in these things, there are different groups, different segments, and all of them want to claim a part of something that actually cannot really be claimed. We're missing the point. People miss the point, and I give so much respect to so many of the beautiful teachings I've come across have come from African Americans, and I'm grateful for them, or brothers and sisters in Africa too. But when it goes into this is only for Black people, I understand that wound, but I also feel this is universal intelligence, and the whole world is thirsty for this right now, because there's a wave coming from here that actually is going to quench the thirst of something happening in the world as it is now. Like this civilization, this new civilization is being built, and there's wisdom from these teachings that are essential and key to that. So, but also all the muck and, like you said, all the stickiness around that also has to be recognized. And I feel keeping it as pure and real as possible. It's never was about skin color. It never was about religion. It's about returning to nature. Every single human on this planet returns to nature, black, white, red, whatever. When we can remember that we're from nature and we treat that with respect as we treat ourselves and others, then we are living in that incredible wisdom that wisdom that is, so I feel that's the legacy. but it's going to take a lot of beings, and unfortunately a lot of spiritual groups and a lot of amazing movements also to come out and take their head out of the sand and be like, guys, this is not what it's about either. But I want to give credit to those who do keep the teachings going, and for those who do need to empower each other, and especially for beings of color from this continent who are taken away, it's their connection back to the land, and of course they want to safeguard it and keep it sacred. But yeah, I think the subject of slavery is a big one that comes along, and not just here, also in Australia where you're at, and all over the world. It's like, this colonialism and this enslavement, but I feel it comes back to our own story of victim and perpetrator. And until we change the victim to become creator, and perpetrator to become the challenger that motivates, like that force that wants to empower, and we do that for each other, and we stop trying to put each other down and say, my school, my this teaching is purer than, it happens everywhere anyway. It's time that we step into, we're not victims of this. Yes, it happened, it was horrible, but inside of all of us lives that, the slave and the perpetrator. We do it with our own selves all the fucking time. We do that with ourselves a lot. We enslave certain desires. We perpetrate ourselves. We're tyrants sometimes to ourselves. So we have to start bringing it in. And I feel the purity of these teachings that come from Egypt are exactly that. They are the gateways to that, which is absolutely pure and true.
Mm. Mic drop. Just gonna let that soak in for a minute. What are you working on? What are you heading to next? What's on your horizon?
It's well, it's to plant the seed here of a Blue Lotus Sanctuary School, actually, that restores these sharings and teachings and wisdom teachings, embodied teachings. So whether I'm doing it online or here on the land, I just feel like I'm tending to those seeds personally. So yeah, I am editing a book that is really based around this too, and but my heart, my desire, my deep passion is to restore these, what I feel are Blue Lotus temples, because the Blue Lotus was really revered here as a symbol of that purity, like that symbol, that ultimate symbol of from mud to lotus, from shit basically to soul awakening. But we cannot have the soul awakening without actually seeing our shit and also being rooted in our shit. Like, we've got to know our shit basically, and have been there, and also have put our roots in there as our living experiences, as our wisdom, so that we grow into that. So for me, the lotus is a medicine, as a plant, as a flower that carries so much of this kind of energy, this signature, So I'd love to feel like there's temples resurrected that support beings or souls to go through these gateways and come home. And it's time we do it fast. And also I'm feeling my heart and being is soaring more towards innovation and what I call like organic technology, which I feel with everything that's happening with crypto and new kind of governances that are forming, how do we as different amazing groups all over the world actually learn to come together? And what I feel is, again, what I was sharing with spiritual groups, no, this is ours, your skin color, or your this or that. It's actually time we start to really let that fall if we're really going to start to show up for this new world. So I feel Egypt holds a key for that, that coming together, so to say, to build what I feel is like the motherboard of the mothership. One way to say it, but not that that's like, it's basically, I'm fascinated by the innovation or this emerging blueprint, and I feel with all my heart, I'm a part of that somewhat. how do we really create this new world? But the social innovation or the social technology is, I feel like, the one that's really time to, how do we come together as humans, not as anything else other than as human, like just humans together with all that we have, but learn how to share it, learn how to bridge it, and be curious enough and loving enough to listen to that and to see we're all a piece of a bigger puzzle, So I feel like that's where it's heading more for me in the next 5 years.
Mm, mm.
I've never shared that openly, so yeah, it's something
It's
very
beautiful.
mm, yeah, very dear to my
Yeah,
heart.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I've loved what the pieces you've transmitted. I feel like they're just really, we've hit two or three things that all go together, that I know that a lot of people who are interested in the stuff I'm writing about and talking about are gonna dig what you've shared a lot, and it's gonna open some doorways. Is there anything else you want to touch on or open up or discuss?
Mm. The only image I don't know, it's just an image that comes to me right now is, the sun with wings, with the two were jets or serpents. And I
Mm,
feel it's for that just symbolizes for me our souls are meant to somewhat soar and fly. We're not, yes, we come into our bodies, but at night we need to fly in order to stay sane in a way. And it's just how can we now start to uplift one another so that we feel that winged nature of our soul. The sun is the soul as it was represented. um, but I feel it's this alone kind of journey. It's like when we see that which is beautiful in another and uplift it and empower it, then I feel we're starting to really, something really beautiful is starting to happen. So that's just the image and the symbol for those who are interested in like symbols is,
mm,
yeah, remember that winged nature of the heart, which is uplifting, it's enlightening, it's. And I also feel the symbol of the lotus. Like we sometimes need to wallow in our own shit, but maybe that's how we fertilize ourselves in
mm,
order to be that lotus, which is emanate our soul essence and signature in the world. That is never going to be what someone else has said or someone else's thing. It's our own unique signature. We can't just learn that from workshops. We can't just keep digging and digging. It's time we look in and. So that image also. But I also have learned to respect that journey of the mud or the underworld or whatever we want to call it. Is give
mm,
it the time it needs. You will be fertilized at the right time. You will be created in the right time. But just remember that, like remember when you're in the mud, you're in the mud, and just allow yourself to even be nourished, be fertilized, feel juicy in it, because eventually, with enough love and nourishment, with like awareness of it, eventually we do emanate who we are in the world. So I don't think going to a workshop will do that, or it's also giving nature its course in our life. What we can do is be aware and tend and keep ourselves, running our juicy energy and
mm,
feeling pleasure, and then eventually the garden does blossom. But I do feel pleasure is a big key here too. And we could go through so
mm,
many things, but but the Hathorian principle of
mm,
pleasure is like be in pleasure even when you're in that, feel it. If you're heartbroken, feel it, almost taste it, savor it. It's a moment. Like if something else is happening, you're frustrated, feel it, but savor it, feel it. Just keep feeling yourself in this human experience, and yeah, and let nature take its course. We're magnificent and such beautiful beings. Yeah, that we hold that mirror to each other. Mm. Mm.
mm. Stunning, stunning.
Oh, and one more image comes in, Dane, before I close, because this one I cried when I saw it, and I've seen it so many times in the Temple of Abydos. The pharaoh of both lands, the Upper Lower Egypt, Pharaoh, sitting, and Isis or Set is breastfeeding him. the humility, like that image, fuck, it touched me so deeply. You, Pharaoh, but you are God embodied as man, and yet you are sitting like a child, drinking from the breast milk of eyes. It's so beautiful, so delicious, so like, oh, that,
Mm.
somehow this journey for me, it was just so much about drinking from the breast milk of me. Just so delicious. So I just
And
feel like
there's something about it's
mm,
deeply harmonious, like I'm just imagining we wouldn't
mm.
typically build a statue of, Donald Trump drinking from the breast of Isis as a tiny baby, or it's just the British guy called, like Gordon Brown, cuddled up in the arms of the
Totally.
divine mother. It's like
Mm,
it puts things in like, even in that era of this exalted human leader, it's like, who is a child, a blessed child, but a
mm.
child in the scheme of divinity and immortality and in infinity. So yeah, I love that.
Totally. And
Yeah.
it's the source of his power. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is
No
the source
question.
of
No
power.
question.
So I wanted to drop that as a final symbol or image when we start working with power, when we can start to work with that. Oof, it changes the whole game.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
Stunning.
mm,
Yeah. Thank you for that.
mm.
Um, so anyone who's listening, who's fallen completely in love with you, which is highly likely to happen, um, how do they follow you, stay in touch with what you're doing, keep an eye on what you're up to? How would that happen?
So I have a website which is www.egyptian dash dash yeah dash templearts.com, and there
Great.
I have some, yeah, that's the easiest way. Otherwise you can find me on Facebook, Jasmeen Hana, Instagram. I'm just starting a YouTube channel, so it's all coming together. But my website is alive and active and full of my next events. 1 month priestess journey, 6-week online programs, and lots of also free meditations and workshops that you can do at home. And yeah.
Great. We'll
Mm-hmm.
we'll attach those with the episode.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm stoked we finally lined it up. I feel like the timing is perfect, and I'm really, really happy with what you shared today.
Thank you. I loved every moment. It just feels so
Mm.
nurturing. So thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing anyone here who's listening who wants to get in touch. You're very welcome to just reach out. Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm sure some people will.